Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Hall H Show podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Nabus, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Alex Benedicto. How you doing, Alex?
Hey, how's it going?
And we are joined today by a person who's no stranger to the podcast. He's a former pro wrestler. Now he's a comic book creator. You may know him from The Accidental Aliens, his comic book Second Shift, and his new comic book, Wanderers of Melisanda, which we'll be talking about today. And for those of you who don't know, or maybe you don't know, is that he's also part Filipino. We'll be talking about that and also Asian representation in pop culture and comic books. So, Scott, welcome back to the podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me.
It's a nice... it's starting to feel like summer here in San Diego, huh?
Yeah. The weather's been a little bipolar recently, but it's getting there. Yeah, the last week or so, I'd say.
Hopefully, it still stays in maybe the low 80s for San Diego Comic Con at least.
Yeah. So we're not baking out there. You get that convention funk going on the inside. Yeah. The smelly nerds.
Especially with the cosplayers, man.
Oh yeah, it must be brutal for them. Like, especially the ones that are like in full body suits and stuff like that. You know, the ones that are in a bit revealing outfits. I guess it's okay for them because they get some breeze. But yeah, for the full body guys, I'm sure it's pretty rough.
Yeah, especially for our buddy Dude Vader. He's part of the Star Wars steampunk universe. He does like a steampunk Darth Vader type.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I'd imagine all of those Star Wars people are sweating their balls off. Like even the Jedi, because they have those giant cloaks on. I'm sure those aren't as breezy as you'd want them to be.
So we got Scott on today, and we're going to talk about his new book, Wanderers of Melisanda. And but before we get to that, I know we've talked about with you in the past about your creative journey. Maybe we can go a little bit more into that again, and also your creative process for this new book. But what were you into when you were a teenager?
When I was a teenager, I was into quite a bit of things. So I was into comics, of course. I was an X-Men kid growing up. Mm-hmm. And then when the teenage years hit, that's when like the Image boom happened. So I'm a child of Image, basically. So there's a lot of 90s influence mixed with like modern comic, storytelling, I would say.
Right.
Pro wrestling.
Did you have a favorite Image comic book or set of comic books?
It was a lot of Wildstorm books,
okay.
Like Wildcats and Gen 13 were really huge. Like those were really big for me. Yeah.
You mentioned wrestling?
Yeah, and pro wrestling. Pro wrestling. Those were like, I think there's two constants in my life. It was comics and pro wrestling. So I actually took a 10-year break from drawing to do pro wrestling. So I was pro wrestling from the age of 20 to 30. And then went back to drawing. I was drawing my entire life up until then. Like even to the point when I was a little kid, I wouldn't leave my house until I finished a page of art. So it was like I was learning a discipline. It was just like, well, I know comics are, like whatever, 20, I think back in the day it was like, 23 pages, 24 pages. So I knew that I needed to do a page a day if I wanted to be a comic book artist. So when I was a little kid in the summer, I wouldn't leave my house until I drew one page of comic book art. And and then I took a break for 10 years and did the pro wrestling thing.
So what was like? Do you remember the exact moment when you decided, hey, I want to start drawing comic books?
I was maybe in third or fourth grade. I can't remember. I had a lot of the same classmates, and I had this classmate Ronnie Panganiban, and we went to school together at Zamorano Elementary, and his uncle is Will Sportaccio.
Oh,
and it's like family friend uncle. I don't think they're blood related. So, but he was like, oh, my uncle works for Marvel Comics, and like he gave him a grip of books. And so, like, you're a little kid, you don't have any, I don't know, shame. So I was just like, oh, can I have one? And he gave me, was that the Alpha Flight? He gave me Alpha Flight 23. So that was like my first comic book.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it's a cover that has Wendigo facing off against, what is it? What's her name? Whitebird? What is it? Snowbird. There it is, yeah. So it's like, and she's in Wendigo form.
Got it.
So they're battling. I think it's a John Byrne cover. And so that was my very first comic. And then after that, my mom... Like, I begged my mom to take me to 7-Eleven because I'd seen comics at 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
So she took me to 7-Eleven. I bought a couple of comics off the spinner rack, like Excalibur. I think it was Excalibur 2. 2 or 3. It's kind of a wild cover. It's like an Alice in Wonderland thing, and Nightcrawler's getting kicked in the butt by like one of the, I think it's one of like the guards or something like that. So shortly after that, I was like, I want to do this. I want to be able to draw comics like for a living. Like someone just draws, like a grown up draws, and they get paid to do this. This is super cool. So that was the first moment I knew I wanted to do it.
So you mentioned John Byrne and Willis Portacio. I mean, who were the formative artists that you followed when you were younger?
When I was around that age, I really liked. I didn't even know it, but like Mark Silvestri was really good. I saw he was like on Fall of the Mutants. There was a cover that always stood out in my mind. It's like where they're all flying through the air, and there's like I think there were characters in there that weren't even that don't even fly, but I can't remember offhand which characters. And it just said Fall of the Mutants at the top, and I always loved that cover. And Art Adams was a huge influence on me, and it's like no coincidence that my favorite artist of all time is Jim Lee, and they have a very similar style. And I saw Art Adams work on Classic X-Men, so that was really the title that I would collect a lot was Classic X-Men, which was reprints of the original X-Men comics. But a lot of times they would have Art Adams covers. And that was the first time I experienced the switcheroo of the cover artist being completely different than the interior artist,
right.
Which was very frustrating for me as a kid. It's like, wait, why does the cover not look like the inside? Why does this look worse, you know? So, those were probably my first couple of influences was Art Adams for sure, and Willis Portacio, and then Jim Lee, Todd McFarlane, Rob Liefeld. Like I really love those guys.
Those all Image guys.
yeah, and all Marvel guys as well.
True.
Like I was just a Marvel kid like growing up. I didn't read much DC. I think you get in one or the other, and then as you get older, then you kind of dip your toe in the other one. That's kind of what I did. I remember when Image founded, I saw that Rob Liefeld, they advertised Youngblood, and they're like, oh yeah, it's under Image Comics. And I just had a real hesitance to even wanting to buy it because it wasn't Marvel.
Gotcha.
And I don't know what that is, but as a kid, I was like brand loyal, and I didn't know why. So I just didn't trust books that weren't Marvel for some reason. But I love their art so much. Of course, I went.
I can sort of relate because growing up, especially when they started producing those Marvel universes, you start reading like the stories behind the characters and the history that that they were a part of in the Marvel universe, and you get invested.
Yeah.
And so for me, I can totally relate. It was hard for me to break away from Marvel and read other publishers.
Yeah. Alex, how about you? What did you read growing up? Or
mostly X-Men.
Okay, you're X-Men kid too.
Yeah. Yeah. Marvel. So a few DC.
Yeah. What era were you into? Like, what was your starting point?
Probably junior high.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is that? Who was your artist? Who were your writers?
Back then I didn't even pay attention to that.
Oh, really? You're just like buying the books.
Yeah. Just reading.
Yeah, it's funny because until I was in my 20s, like even late 20s, that's when I started paying attention to writers. I wasn't really paying attention to writers back then. And I had some friends, and they would be like, "Oh, who's your favorite writer?" And I'm just like, "Writer?" Like it wasn't even as an artist, like because I've always been into drawing. Like my dad's a painter, so I inherited some of his ability, so it just kind of came natural, some of it. And so I just never really paid attention to the writing side of it. But then as you get older, you realize like, oh, there's other people that do this book. Right. Like you should probably pay attention to those people.
I guess going forward to from comic books to pro wrestling, I mean, how did you initially get introduced to pro wrestling?
I just watched it a lot as a kid. Okay. Yeah, I just watched it. It was on TV all the time. We'd always get the pay-per-views at my house. And so I was just exposed to it all the time. And I saw, like, as I was getting older, when I was a teenager, like, YouTube started becoming more prominent. And then people were, like, uploading their YouTube videos of their matches and their backyard matches.
Right,
but it was, like, kids hurting each other and, like, using cheese graters and just doing stupid stuff. And it was quote-unquote backyard wrestling. And I was like, I want to do backyard wrestling, but I want to do it like WWF, at the time. I wanted it to be that style. I want it to be pro wrestling. I want it to tell a story. So even as a little kid, I was always interested in the story of wrestling. And so me and my friends started doing backyard wrestling. And one of my friends invited one of his friends. and he actually wanted to be a pro wrestler. And his girlfriend found a flyer for UPW's Ultimate University. Ultimate Pro Wrestling was what UPW stood for, but the wrestling school was Ultimate University. It's the same place that John Cena trained at, and a couple of other people, Victoria. So I went up there with him to just check out a practice, and there was a lot of guys like around mine and his size. Like I'm 5'9", and my old partner who's like 5'7", and a lot of the guys that were training were on our size, and that kind of gave us hope. It was like, oh, this is cool. And so yeah, we just checked out a practice, and from there we ended up signing up and going in and training, and me and him excelled, and we became popular right away. Just we're more athletic than most of the people we were training with. And then just went for 10 years.
You actually created your own organization, right?
Yeah, Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. I'm one of the founding members of Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, PWG. It's a very, very popular independent company, pro wrestling company. It's one of the biggest independents in the world, I would say. It's very well known. So, but once I retired, like it was like any kind of claim to it or stakes to it, it kind of just left it on the table. I mean, if they ever sell the company for millions of dollars, I'm going to say what's up, but I just kind of let them do their thing. And then just left it at that. We initially created it because we wanted more places to work. The indie scene back when I was working, it was like some places would pop up and then they would disappear like after a year or less, like they'd go away. I think a lot of the promoters realized that it wasn't a thing to make a lot of money. If you're trying to make a lot of money as a promoter, I never understood it. I was like, how are you paying all of us, and then sometimes you only have like 50 fans show up, and just like that's $500. That guy I know costs at least 200, and like you start doing the math, you're like, how is this even making sense? But anyway, we wanted more places to work because all the places were dying, and so we created our own company, and then it got really, really popular, and it just took off.
Cool. I mean, you mentioned independent pro wrestling, and you sort of segued back into independent comic book creating. Yeah. What is it like being an independent comic book creator?
It's very rewarding in the sense that you don't have anyone telling you what to do. Like that's what I've always wanted. I've honestly never wanted to be like the next big X-Men artist or anything like that. I've never had that thought. I've always had the thought of like, oh, I want kids to read my characters and my stories. I don't want to just draw X-Men. I just don't want to tell the next best X-Men story. I mean, it might be nice at some point, but that's never been my goal. It's like, well, I have stories running around in my head, and I'm just naturally a storyteller going back from wrestling. It's just like, that's all I want to do is tell stories.
Mm-hmm. Why is it important to tell your own story?
I don't know. I think it's, legacy. Mm-hmm. Like whatever happens to you after it's all over. I don't know. I think that might be a part of it. It's like, when I leave this earth, did I make any impact on anybody? Like how much of an impact did I make? I've actually made a nice wrestling name for myself. Like I'm pretty well known in the independent scene.
Yeah, people share your videos all the time.
Yeah, and a lot of the guys that are working, it's a lot, like I'll watch them and it's like, it's kind of like Japanese, like what is the Japanese writing? Is it like it's like a fingerprint, like not everyone writes the same, like the calligraphy. Right. It's like there's a way you do it that's very unique, and wrestling's like that. Like when people move, I can see, I'm like, that guy is moving like me, and like I move a particular way when I wrestle, and people don't do that. It's like a signature or a fingerprint. And and I'll have like there's a couple of guys in like WWE right now, and my buddy was working there. He was in WWE as well, TJP. And I said, hey, ask that guy if he watches my stuff. and TJ is he's actually Filipino as well. Okay. TJ was like, he's always been this way. Even when I was working on the indies, when we're both on the indies, he would say, Scott, there's nothing new under the sun. He goes, everybody steals from everyone. I'm like, whatever, dude. So he says the same thing to me, right? And I'm like, just ask him if he watches my stuff. I'm like, the way he's moving like me, and no one naturally moves like that. Like, that's just how I move. And then he goes, yeah, whatever. And then like 30 minutes later, he goes, yeah, he watches your stuff all the time. So I was like, oh, I knew it. I was like, these bastards, they're on TV stealing my stuff. I'm like, I'm not doing it anymore, so I'm not mad about it. But it's kind of nice, you know. It's just like,
Sure.
I'll see something and I'm like, oh, I made that. Like I'm the one that created that, you know. And like, there's like my favorite wrestler was Bret Hart growing up, and he has a niece, Natty Neidhart. It's Bret's tag partner, Jim Neidhart. It's his daughter. Right? Yeah, the Anvil. It's his daughter. And when I was on the Indies, I created a double sharpshooter. I stacked two bodies on top of each other, and I sharpshooter both of them at the same time. It's very difficult to do, but one day I just thought of it, and one day it was on TV, and everyone was messaging me like, "Dude, she did your thing. She did your thing." You know, I was like, "Oh, that's awesome!" Like, my idol Bret Hart, his niece is on TV doing my stuff. I'm like, that's kind of cool.
Sharpshooter's like almost like a Boston crab, but
it's kind of like a Boston crab, but you grapevine the legs, like you crisscross the legs.
That's right. Okay,
yeah,
got it.
Or a scorpion deathlock. It's the same move. It's just called different things.
Got it. Wow. I guess also maybe controlling your own narrative is a definite positive of being an independent creator. Because,
yeah, definitely. Like you want to be able to tell your story without worrying that you're compromising your vision, you know? And so I think that's a huge part for me. That's how come I think I'm constantly in search for a publisher that would let me retain my character rights. Like, let me just do my story like an Image Comics. Like, my dream is to work for Image Comics, like the bottom line. And if I never get there, I'll always strive to get there, right? Because the worst thing you could do is just give up, because then you'll never get it. You'll never do anything if you just give up. So it's like, well, I'm going to constantly try to get to a company, get to Image, or a company like Image that will let me tell my stories, you know, like without changing the narrative of the story, or what I'm trying to share with the world.
What's it like? I mean, I don't know if you've tried to get into Image already, or, I mean,
with the second shift I have, I don't think they really do superhero stuff anymore. I think you have to be extremely well known, or just have such a different spin on the superhero world that they would accept it. Like, I think they're focusing mostly on like sci-fi and horror, like science style comics, and those are super fun to read. Like, I love Black Science and Deadly Class. Like, there's just all types of books that they do, but I don't think they're going for superhero stuff anymore. But I do want to pitch Wanderers of Melisanda to them, because it's so different than the stuff that I normally do, which is standard American superhero books, that I think it could be a nice fit for them. And then hopefully I can backdoor the second shift in there. You try to establish a connection with a company, and if they like one of your properties but not the other, maybe you can gain some popularity with your one title and get enough good grace with them where they would actually attempt to take on your other book.
That sounds like a good plan to me.
Yeah. You gotta, hey, this is selling well. You guys like me, right? Hey, check this other thing out I do.
Speaking of Wanderers of Melisanda, it initially started as a story in your Accidental Aliens anthology, correct? Yes.
Yeah. So for the 2017 and 18, for those don't know, my art studio, the Accidental Aliens, we are a collective of San Diego artists and creators. We have writers in there as well. And every year we do an anthology, and it's a series of short stories. And so for 2017 and 18, I did Wanderers, which was like the first 6 pages and then the next 6 pages. And so issue 1 actually collects those 12 pages, and I drew 9 new ones. And I actually went back on a few of the old ones, and I adjusted some of the art, because over the last couple of years, my style with that book has even changed. Like, so I was initially trying to emulate more of a manga style, and I feel like it's settled in well as the years went on. So I was like, okay, I have like a particular style now with it, but the older pages didn't match, so I had to go back and change a couple of like facial expressions to make it more fit nice and tight, like streamless, so you're not like taken out of the story, it's just like, it's not jarring. So I went back and I adjusted some expressions, made it a little more, it's like a nice mixture of manga and like Disney animation almost. Like there's kind of like a little Disney vibe to it, like I feel.
Right.
And I think as the years have gone on, I'm getting more of a clear vision of what I want the story to be like and the world. So it's like I kind of want this to be, it has to be kid friendly. I want it to be kid friendly. And so I also want the style of it to appeal to a younger audience.
So do you have like a, I mean, with that point that you just made about how your style is changing or has changed throughout the years, do you have like a standards guide that so you draw your characters in certain different looks and angles and your sort of typical elements that you usually use over and over? Do you have those like in a sort of like a standard guide that you sort of refer to?
Like I'll do like character study when I think of the characters. I'll kind of just work them out and see what works better. Like I have my initial sketches that'll actually be in the back of the first issue, and then or at least for the 2017 version. But in the second issue, I actually want to include a lot of the older stuff. Like I thought of this story quite a while ago. I think 2012 was when I first thought of this story. And I've just been tweaking them ever since. Like I had one part of the story very solidified. Like the two main characters are Mars and Lee. And so I knew that story. I knew that journey. I knew how it was starting. I knew how it was finishing. I know the end of the story already. But I didn't know what else to do. Like I kind of wanted it to be Avatar meets Mad Max, Akira, and dinosaurs.
Well, that's interesting because I remember reading the Wonders of Melisanda in your anthology, and I didn't see any reference to Akira yet. So
yeah, it'll get there. It'll get there. So there's a lot of let me try. I'm trying to think of the first 12 pages. So there's definitely like an Avatar and a He-Man influence, and so like that's the other thing over the years that has been solidifying more. It's like, well, like I want to put some of my childhood in there, like some childhood influence, and like a really a not so known cartoon is Dinosaurs. Do you guys remember that cartoon?
I'm not familiar with that one.
It's like it's kind of like it's kind of weird. Like it seriously was unintentional. I realized it after the fact, but it's like evolved dinosaurs.
So is it like, was it made during the 80s or was it like...
Yeah, it was an 80s cartoon. Okay. Yeah. And it like, I don't think it had a super long run or anything, but it was just like around that area, there's throwing tons of stuff at the wall. And that was one of them. And I was like, oh, this is cool. I love dinosaurs, So, but I was going over the story, like I was talking to my writer and I'm like, look, I have an idea for these characters. I know where they want to go, but I'm trying to think of antagonists and what to do with them. And I'm like, what do you think of this? And I had brought up, like, I don't know, I've been fascinated with like evolution and like the history of the earth and stuff like that. And so I was like, I want to put a lot of that in there. And like, what do you think about this? Is this too weird? Is it too far of a combination to do like a Avatar journey style story and then just have dinosaurs in it? Is that weird? And he's like, no, like it's very interesting. He's like, makes it more interesting actually, then it's more compelling. And I was like, for a while I was fighting it. I was just, but now it's so ingrained into what I'm doing in the story that it's kind of weird to think of the story without it.
So you mentioned Mars. Is it named after your niece?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So the characters actually just are avatars. Like the Lee is a stand-in for me, and then Mars is Mars. So, yeah, it's just kind of like our journey, and that's what made the story like kind of go so easily. It's like, oh, okay, it's kind of like our journey in life together, but I don't know, made super fun and on an alien world. So, and like how I see my relationship with her, that will be put into the story a lot. And, it's kind of like you tell yourself, like as a parent or, like a ninong or whatever, you're like, oh, I would do anything for this kid, and then so in the story, I'm going to show you that I'll do anything for the kid, so.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Looking forward to seeing how it unfolds.
Yeah. It's super fun. I've really enjoyed doing the latest pages. And then in the 2020 Accidental Alien Anthology, I'm going back to Wanderers. So 2019, I took a break and I did a a story about a kaiju, like a kaiju origin story. It's actually the origin of the kaiju in Second Shift issue 7.
That's right.
So it's the origin of that kaiju. And since the 2019 was a creature feature, I was like, oh, this is a perfect opportunity to tell that story. Do it like old school Japanese manga, like with the Zipatone and stuff, like give that Godzilla vibe, you know, like,
Right.
so.
Yeah, that's pretty appropriate for everything that's coming out.
Yeah. So in 2020, I'm going back to Wanderers, and it'll be part of issue 2. I just don't know what part. Like, it's not going to be the opening scene of the second issue, because the 2020 anthology is post-apocalyptic. So I'm going to have to figure out with my writer how to focus on the villains, like how to get to the villains in a digestible 7-page story. Like, okay, people can start just reading this little part of it and understand what's happening, like not be too confused.
Maybe a prequel? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, yeah, it might even have to be something like that. I really want it to be something I can use for the second issue. Like the benefit of having those 12 pages done from the 2017 and 18 was I had just finished Second Shift issue 8. And I wanted to push forward. I'm like, I need to finish the next book. I need to finish Wanderers, and I've been putting that off forever, you know. So I was like, okay, I can do 9 pages, no problem, and you know, add those 2 and make a story out of it. And I want to keep it going. After completing the first issue, it's like, oh, this was really, really fun. Like, it's just so much different than like standard American comics. Like, it's like, oh, all right, it's a nice change of pace. It was refreshing.
You mentioned a writer. Besides the writer, I mean, are you handling all the other duties?
So my writer, it's E. Bronson from the Second Shift. So he's my main collaborator. Like, me and him, we talk pretty much any comic related stuff. We go over stuff together. So he's actually handling like the kind of like co-plotting. Like we're co-plotting the story together, and I kind of tell him where I want it to go. But like in the Second Shift, that's how we do it for sure. It's like, this is what I want to happen. Like, I tell him, like, you know, these are the characters. This is what I want to happen. He takes off. And for Wanderers, I had done the first 12 pages already, and I was like, look, I need to wrap this up, like, in, you know, and like leave it off on a cliffhanger. What do you think? And he just came up with the next bit of it. So that was really good. As far as, so this is in Zipatone also, for you of those out there, Google Zipatone. So it's like the dots or the gridded gradients and stuff like that. So if you look it up, you'll know what it is. And so this is all black and white, and just kind of give that old school manga vibe. So I do those as well. I'm not a good colorist, so I couldn't color like the Second Shift or this book, but I'm learning how to do Zipatones, like kind of studying manga. Reading American comics pretty much my whole life. It's different. You're flexing a different muscle. Like learning how to use Zipatones appropriately it's so different. It's like learning a different language. So there's that. And I actually had Tristan Whitehouse from the Accidental Aliens. He actually lettered Second Shift 8, and so he actually helped me finish up lettering Wanderers 1 because my computer crapped out.
Oh no.
Yeah, so I was like, hey man, I got 9 pages left. Could you think you could help me out? So he helped me out to finish that up. And then my normal editor is David Lauch, and he usually edits Second Shift, and so he edited this as well. And that's pretty much it.
How did you find your creative team?
E. Bronson, I used to wrestle with him, actually. Mr. Excitement was his wrestling name. And yeah, so I met him years ago, and we had pro wrestling and comics in common, and Bruce Lee and basketball. So like we just had all of these random interests like that all lined up. Sorry. And so, you know, at shows we would kind of, you know, BS and we talk about comics, and he was just like, oh yeah, I have my own comics. I have my own characters that I write and stuff like that. And so he would send me scripts once in a while. And like his stuff was like more warrior oriented, like, and I was just like, oh, that's cool, you know, like I'm not really into war, but you know, and he would always try to get me to draw his books, and I'm like, well, I'm trying to draw my book. I'm like, so I really can't do it. So we stopped talking about it, and I drew according to him, the infamous issue 0 of Second Shift. It's like a book that I wrote, and it's just like really bad. Like it's really badly written, I think. And so it's just like even to the point where I had like a bank robber running out of the bank with money bag signs on it. It was just dumb. But anyway, over the years, we eventually were like, hey, we should, collaborate. I was like, what do you think about writing my book? Because I know writing, you can write multiple things at once, and like you're not stuck with one project, where artists, they can pretty much only draw one thing unless you're like insanely fast. So he agreed. Like I had him and another one of my friends, they were both writers, kind of try out for it. And the other guy, Bob, he helped write the first story arc. He's really good at the main villain. But just as the process went on, like I realized, I'm like, it's just easier to collab with one person. Ed was bringing a lot to the table, and so it was just kind of easier to work one-on-one with the writer. And the editor, he's a longtime friend, but he had an English degree, so I was like, oh no, that's probably someone I should talk to. And so he's been able to edit the book for me, kind of points things out, and like, look, this is kind of weird because of this or whatever. So he doesn't interfere with the vision of it or anything like that. It's just kind of like, hey, this is weird. You might want to take a look at it, and that type of thing. And then Tristan, met him at San Diego Comic Fest years ago, like I think 3 years at this point, 2 or 3 years at this point.
Time flies, huh?
Yeah, it's crazy. And so that's usually where I recruit people for the Accidental Aliens at Comic Fest.
I think we talked about that on a previous podcast.
Yeah, so it's just kind of like my scouting ground. It's like, like the G League or something. And so yeah, I was just like, oh, he's pretty cool. And he tabled next to another alien, Rodney Anderson. So Rodney had strangely met him at a Starbucks. Like
that's right.
Him and Tristan would work in the morning. They would go to Starbucks and just like draw or do whatever. And the workers were constantly trying to get them to meet each other, because they were just two dudes who independently drew comic books, just not with each other. And then, somehow that worked out, and they ended up tabling next to each other at Comic Fest. And Rodney was like, hey, we should take a look at this guy. He's pretty good. I was like, actually, I was going to say the same thing, because, he had introduced me to him at the show. Rodney introduced me to him at the show. And I was like, yeah, his stuff's really good, and he seems pretty cool. And he seems to like get our sense of humor. Like that's a big thing. You can't, like, for our group, we have a very particular sense of humor, and if we don't think you'll get along with that sense of humor, you probably can't hang out. Because we'll offend you. Not because we're being jerks, but it's because like you'll probably get offended by some of the stuff we say, 'cause we're crazy.
Yeah, I've had, both Alex and myself, we had a chance to hang out with the aliens every once in a while, and you guys seem like you guys have a pretty good, close-knit relationship.
Yeah, it's important. It's like not everyone can get that type of humor or accepts that type of humor. So when you find someone that's like that, you kind of like, they get weeded out very quickly. It's like, well, look, you this is who we are, and if you don't like it, it's fine. It's not a big deal. Like, we don't expect you to be like us, and vice versa. So just like, we can part. Because sometimes we'll get someone who I didn't necessarily recruit that comes into the group. Oh, was there extraneous noise? It's a refrigerator.
Yeah.
Refrigerator ramping up.
I was wondering what it was.
So yeah, sometimes we'll get people that will kind of invite themselves into the group, and then and like, we're not rude, so I can tell them, no, you can't hang out with us, cool kids can't sit here. So, but then what happens is they'll kind of hang out, and then like, we just kind of won't get along, and then eventually they'll weed themselves out, and so that kind of works out that way. It's kind of strange.
Right. I guess going back to Wanderers and Melisanda, I mean, how long did it take, for the first issue, from start to finish, like from the planning to handing it off to the printer?
So the anthology parts of it, those came together relatively quickly. The 2017 and 2018, like, I wrote them super fast, and like, I think my niche as a writer, because I'm a good rewriter. I can write good dialogue. If you give me the scenario, I could write good dialogue. Like, that's not a problem. But like, thinking of long plotting stories, that's where I'll have a bit of an issue. It's like, that's why I love my writers, because he'll weave stuff into the story that I would never have thought to do. And so doing short stories is very easy for me. It's like, oh, I got 6-7 pages to tell a story. I could do that, no problem. But then, so with the rest of it, I explained to my writer what I wanted to do, and he came back like a day or two later with the script. He's very fast, and I was like, yeah, this sounds good. And it was relatively fast from when he sent it to me. I would say like 2 months, 3 months. Trying to think. Yeah, I was kind of burning through those pages. I just developed a new drawing technique that allows me to draw a lot faster. So I'd say it took me maybe 3 months, and then with the lettering and stuff like that, maybe another month. Or no, a couple weeks actually. Tristan's really quick too, and he's like juggling multiple projects. He's doing like Tarek Zion, which is his title. He's coloring Sword Saga with Rodney.
Cool.
And freelance work plus his day job. So he's like insanely busy.
Yeah, and I see his social media posts, and I was like, will this guy ever get a chance to sleep?
He barely gets to sleep. He's all like me, where like I don't think we need a lot of sleep.
Yeah.
And he's just, I don't know, I think he's like half blood, half coffee. So yeah. So relatively quick. I would say the 3 to 4 months process from start to print. And then the printer I'm working with, they're a pretty quick turnaround. They're a small company, and I'm just testing them out. They were referred to from a friend, someone I met at San Diego Comic-Con, and so he told me about them, and so I'm trying them out, and they have like a 2-day turnaround, which is insanely quick.
Cool. You mentioned a new drawing technique. Besides that, I mean, with this second book under your belt, I mean, is there anything else that you learned, that you improved upon, with this process going, versus what you did with Second Shift?
Yeah, I would say doing the Second Shift has helped the process. Like it's all a learning process. Like just over the years, that's all you can do is the more you do something, the better you get at it. And I started this new process where I work on multiple pages at once. So I find that if you're doing one page, it's just like anything else. Like some days you might be like, if you're a writer, for instance, you might have writer's block because you just can't get past something. And as an artist, I find that there are days where I can draw people really good this day, but I can't draw backgrounds really good. Like this day, it's not flowing. The background stuff's not flowing. And then so if you're on a page and all you have left is background, what do? You're stuck. You're going to be drawing bad backgrounds all day. So you could push through it, which I recommend. It's like, just keep working, like you will get it done. It's not fun, but get through it. Or you can do my method, which is drawing multiple pages at once. Because if that day I'm really good at drawing backgrounds, I'm going to jump around to all the backgrounds. I'm going to find the hardest backgrounds in those 8 pages and do those first. It's like, oh, I'm in the groove. Like I can really crank these out. So I'll just go through and find the most difficult stuff and I'll work on those. And then when I'm back in the mood, when I'm back into the position where I can't draw backgrounds, I don't need to because they're already done. Mm-hmm. So now you're not being held up. So what you're doing is the best possible case of time management. So when you're working on backgrounds and you're not feeling it, it's going to take a lot longer. It's going to eat up more of your time because you're grinding through it. You have to get through it. There's nothing else to do. You draw the characters already. So, but with this process, you're just constantly working at your best. So it's like, I could bang out backgrounds all day right now. So you're just working. And then, you could jump to characters if you want or whatever the case is. So there is no lag time. There's no stalled time in between. Like you're not frustrated with having to draw something because there's something else to draw because you're working on 8 pages at once. Mm-hmm. So I found that's what sped up my process for Wanderers. It was just like, oh, cool. Like, yeah, I'll work on this difficult background. And like in Wanderers 1, there's not that many difficult backgrounds. Like the beauty of Wanderers, why I kind of designed it this way, is I wanted a lot of the buildings to be like non-conformative buildings, like that. I want them to be weird shapes and stuff like that, because when I draw a Second Shift, they have to look like buildings because it's in the city.
Right.
The book takes place in the city, so you're constantly just drawing buildings. And so I was like, Wanderer's an alien planet. The buildings can look like whatever I want them to look like, so right. That helped a lot. But there were a couple of panels where it was like very detailed and like a cityscape, and I'm just like, whoa. So yeah, went through it pretty quick.
I mean, listening to you, it seems like you have a pretty good combination of being both artistic and analytic. Like you have, you're systematic in your approaches.
Yeah. You have to be a lot of times. Like, as an artist, you want to be like you want to show a lot of expression in your work and all of that. But it is a planning process. It's like not all coincidence. Like that, a lot of the best artists have the best composition. Like you're really working at it, and you really have to think about it. It's not just, oh, I'm just drawing this cover now and it's going to be amazing. It's like, all right, well, what am I trying to do here? And for someone like me and Tristan, who are constantly busy, like we constantly have work to do, it's like, what's the best way to tackle this? Like I notice I'm eating a lot of hours trying to figure this out, and how do I shave that time down? And so I came up with the I call it the Slack method. It's the Scott Lost Advanced Comic Method. So the Slack method. So I came up with that method. Just one day I've been working digitally, and when you work digitally, it allows for you to do stuff like this. Like if you're doing traditional comic work, you would have to have 8 pieces of paper out in front of you, and it's like, that's crazy. Like I've seen it done. I've seen Jim Lee do it before. Like it's wild. Mm-hmm. Like I'm like, whoa, he's working on a lot of pages. Like it wasn't 8, but it was like he was jumping around from page to page. Back then, like the idea of that seemed insane to me. Mm-hmm. It's like, you're working out of order? Why are you working out of order? Like my brain was like, I need order. But when I'm working digitally, I can see all the pages at once. So it's not out of order necessarily, because it's like, well, I'm working on all of them. So it mentally doesn't throw me off.
So when did you make the shift from traditional to going completely digital?
I think mid 2018. Wait. I think somewhere in 2018. No, 2017. 2017, I switched to digital. So Emily Roca, she's in Accidental Aliens. Rocha. She says Rocha. It looks like Roca to me. Rocha.
It's like almond Roca.
Right. So I say Roca. It's Rocha. So that always messes me up. Anyway, so she was upgrading her iPad. She wanted to get the brand new iPad. And I jokingly say, hey, so you ever get the new one, you could, I'll buy your old one off of you, you know? Right. I didn't think I didn't think she was going to upgrade, for one. Like it was kind of like in passing, because Eric, one of the other aliens, he was really pumping up the new model. And then she was like, oh man, you're making me want to get the new one. And so people say stuff like that all the time. You don't think they're going to do it. And then so I was like, yeah, if you want to sell the old one. And then like 30 minutes later, she messaged me. She's like, hey, are you serious? Do you want to buy my old one off of me? And I'm like, yeah. Like, how much? And I was like, yeah, that's a good price, totally. And so she ended up buying the new one. So I got her old one. Mm-hmm. And then that allowed me to start working digitally. And initially I was doing a combination. I was doing digital layouts, and then I would print them out on 11 by 17, and I would ink traditionally, because I like the idea of having physical work. Like if any of these books ever took off, it's like, oh, well, here's physical pages. If you want to buy the physical pages or just look at them, you can. Mm-hmm. And I've always liked that aspect. Going to conventions as a kid, like I loved looking through artist portfolios, and wanting to make a living off of it. It's like, oh, but I can also sell these pages, right? So I was doing that, but I found that I got to a page. It was a second shift page, and I printed it out, and I was looking at the line work, and I'm like, this page is so tight. Like, it's already inked. It's just inked digitally. It's inked already. But I'm about to go over this in ink. Like, I'm going to do this page all over again. And that kind of woke something up in me. And it's like, you're wasting time. Like, you shouldn't be wasting this time. You need to figure out what you want to do. And so I figured out, like, okay, if I still want physical work, I'm going to have to either get insanely fast, or I can just print out splash pages and covers. And then so I'll have the splash pages and covers to sell, which are the ones that usually sell for the most anyway, and the quickest. And that's it. And then just work digitally on the other ones, and just know, like, okay, they just don't exist traditionally, and it's not a big deal. Mm-hmm. And so I did some of issue 8, most of issue 8 traditionally, the combination digital than traditional. But then the last page, I was like, I'm not drawing this. I'm not inking. I'm not printing it out and inking it. I just did it digitally, and no one can tell. They just like I showed someone like, yeah, I can't tell. It looks exactly like the other ones. I'm like, I know. Like I was wasting time. So, with Wanderers, you might be able to tell if you look at the first 8 pages. Those were done traditionally, but then the last 9 pages were all digital. So when you get the book, check it out and let me know if you could tell.
Cool. And how long did it take for you to get fully like comfortable with the digital process? Because I think you use Procreate. Is that what it's called?
Yeah. Honestly, it was really weird at first. Like, it feels like you're drawing on glass, and it's just such your body, your hand. You're used to like the vibrations from paper. Like as you drag your pencil across it, there's a certain texture, and you don't get that with or Apple Pencil and an iPad. Like you don't get that same feeling. Like you can get screen protectors that kind of simulate paper texture, but I don't find that it's helpful. But it took me, I think, a week or 2 to get adjusted. But now it doesn't faze me at all. It's just like, okay, this is just what this is now.
Yeah, because you were just jamming on it before the podcast.
Yeah.
You were just,
Yeah.
I was like, whoa.
Yeah, it's super rad. I love it. It's like having a Cintiq, like a portable Cintiq. It's amazing. And the app Procreate, it's like I really highly recommend that app. It has a lot of Photoshop elements to it, and I think it's under $10. Like when I bought it, it was $5.99. And there was no monthly fee or anything like that. Like I know there's a lot of apps that are coming in, like Clip Studio, used to be Manga Studio. That's really popular, but it has a monthly fee. Like you pay $5 a month to use it, but it's like essentially it's like Photoshop. Like it's just as good as Photoshop.
Did you already know how to use Photoshop previously?
Yeah, I'm pretty decent at Photoshop. That's what I use. I actually don't know how to use Clip Studio, and so it's a little daunting. Like I downloaded it like on a trial, and I don't think I used it. Like I was just trying to figure it out. This is like, it's like going from an iPhone to an Android. You're just like, what the heck is this? I don't understand. I don't understand what this is.
Cool. I guess we can maybe talk about San Diego Comic-Con. They're celebrating their 50th anniversary this year. It's gonna be a big one. Yeah. What do you got planned for at your table?
So as of right now, I'm going to be in small press with the Accidental Aliens. So I do not have that number off of hand. I don't know what our booth number is, but we'll be in small press. And if I can, I'm still going to, like I've been trying to get a Artist Alley table, just so we kind of spread ourselves out through the show. Like
are you on a waiting list for that one?
I'm on the wait list, yeah. So I'm going to follow back up with them and see if anything opened up, especially closer to the show. Like that's when it tends to happen.
Yeah. And
just so we could kind of spread us out, so we don't have so many aliens at the small press table. And Emily Rocha, she's already in Artist Alley.
Oh, cool.
Vince, I don't know Vince's last name. Vince is already in Artist Alley too. So
I think it's Alvindia.
Yeah, Alvindia. So they're in Artist Alley. I'm on the wait list. So if anything, I'll be in Artist Alley. If not, I'll be in small press.
Cool.
Yeah, and that's where I'll be debuting Wanderers issue 1, and I'll actually have a very limited edition, 2 limited edition covers for that, and that's actually why I went with this printing company, because like they're pretty cool. Like they have like a lot of different paper options, and I was like, oh, so 90s. So I was like, okay, I need to get a book printed. So I'm gonna have 23 of this. It kind of looks like a metal print cover, and then 2. It's called Lava, and it has kind of like a wavy holographic texture to it. So I have a couple limited edition covers of Wanderers 1, and then I'll have like the regular book there as well.
Cool. And you got a bunch of prints that you sell every convention as well?
Yes, that's another reason why I'm trying to get into Artist Alley. It's like I have such a big setup that we're going to split the table evenly. Like everyone's going to get X amount of space for prints, and obviously the forefront, it's small press, so the forefront is going to be books, all of our books. And so the anthologies, Tarek Zion, Second Shift, Wanderers, Super Abled, Cherub, like all those books are going to be for sale there. But then we'll have one binder that's full of prints, and it'll be split up amongst the artists. And then, but I have a ton of stuff, so I'm just like, I should try to get an Artist Alley, but But yeah,
No, fingers crossed, man.
yeah, it's tough, but we'll see.
What was the your first Comic-Con, San Diego Comic-Con that you went to? Do you remember when it was?
I think 90 maybe.
90? Oh, wow.
Yeah, I've been going my whole life, like
Okay.
San Diego, born and raised. It was like back then you can just get in. Like you could show up the day of and just buy a 4-day pass or whatever the case is. Yeah, but not now. I remember going to the shows with my friends, and then like you could pre-purchase your ticket for the next year, and I think you save like $25 or $40 or something. I think it was probably like 25, but they're like, oh, if you pre-purchase, you can save this much. But we were kids, and I was like, well, I can save the $20 now, but I really want to buy that statue, or I want to buy more comics or whatever. So we would always just buy it the next year, and yeah, it was really cool. You could just walk up that day and get it, and it wasn't even a thing. Our moms would just drop us off curbside with a bunch of like Jack in the Box jumbo jacks in our backpacks, and kind of fend for ourselves all day.
I think mine was probably 95. How about you, Alex? When was yours?
Early 90s sometime.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember in the junior high in the 80s, everyone used to talk about volunteering, and all the diehard comic guys used to go. But I wasn't that diehard, but sometimes in the early 90s I remember going.
Yeah, that's what we'd do if we didn't have enough money. We would volunteer and you'd have to work for so many hours. Like it was like 3 hours, 4 at the most or something. But when you're a kid, like holy cow, it's forever. You're like, oh man, like this needs to hurry up. Trying to find we'll actually have the 2019 crew, the anthology crew. We'll actually have a panel drawing inspiration, how drawing groups can turn aspiring fans into printed comic creators. And that's going to be 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. on Thursday, so 7/18/19. That's the date. Not to confuse you guys. From 4 to 5, room Grand 12 at the Marriott Marquis San Diego Marina.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find.
I think I bookmarked your panel.
Yeah, I think
okay, cool.
On that one too.
I know Travis had sent in the booth number.
I couldn't find it.
But I could. Yeah, I don't think we posted it online because I don't think we were allowed to. Oh. So we had it. We sent it in somewhere.
Okay, we'll find out and we'll add it to the blog post and.
K05.
Okay, there you go.
Small press K05.
Cool. We'll look forward to seeing you guys there, and also the other Accidental Aliens. I mean, seeing as how you've gone to San Diego Comic-Con all these years, I mean, do you have any like maybe quick fond memories that you can remember that were pivotal to your Comic-Con experience?
I just remember hanging out in Artist Alley a lot, just kind of watching artists draw and just hang out. And I would always make sure to ask them, like, is it okay? Is it okay if I just stand here and watch you for a while? Like, I'd like to draw, so I just like watching people draw, and like everybody was pretty cool about it. And I remember spending an overabundance of time at this is actually when I was a grown-up already. It was Joshua Middleton. He did what was that? X-23. What book did she appear in? It's like something X or something like that. But he did a string of like New Mutants covers, and he just does beautiful work. And I remember standing at his table for hours just picking his brain, and it was just so cool about it. He was just like giving such helpful tips, and I was just like, man, like this guy's awesome. And I always worried about time. I'm like, I'm not fast enough. I don't draw that fast. He goes, I'm not fast at all. And he goes, just take your time, like make it the best you can make it. And then it's so funny because artists have just different views on how to do things. And his work was so beautiful that he could take the time to do his work, because I think he was getting, what he was getting paid, he was allowed to take his time, right? But then there's other artists that are like workman artists that are just like kind of like grind it out. And their thing is just get it done as fast as you can. Like if you don't like something you did, just fix it the next time you do it, And it's just like, okay, like I think that's kind of the mentality that I need to have, because if I wanted to take my time with everything, I'd never get anything done. So, but yeah, I spent so much time at his table that year. I ended up buying that piece on my wall over there. It's Saga. It's Alana and the baby from Saga, and yeah, it was just such a nice piece. I was just like, oh, this thing is rad. And he let me know, he was like, yeah, it was actually a commission from someone, but when I finished it, they were like, oh, I wanted you to color it. And it's like on a kind of like a brownish paper, and like a tan paper. And so he couldn't really color it. So he actually had to light box that image onto another piece of paper and then color that one. So I was like, oh, so I own the original to this original commission? He goes, yeah, this is the original. And I was like, oh man, that's cool. And he showed me a print of it, and it was a beautiful print. And then so I ended up buying it off of him.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it was like he spent so much time talking to me, and just like giving me real insight on things. And like he wasn't being a jerk. He wasn't just kind of, I don't know, like just selling me whatever, you know. It was just like he was just being cool, and I was just like, oh, I really like you. Like, you're cool. Let me buy this $200 piece off of you. So, yeah, I'd say that's one of my fondest memories of San Diego. Like, as a grown up, as a kid, it was just being there with your friends and toughing it out. Like I said, just my mom drops us off curbside, where you could actually just get dropped off curbside without it being an issue, and just a backpack full of Jumbo Jacks and making the day work. And you could sit wherever you want. You just sit along the side of the wall and no one tripped out on you. As long as you were just out of the way, it was fine. And so I really love those memories, like just doing stuff like that.
Is there anything that the San Diego Comic-Con can do to, I guess, draw more attention to Artist Alley?
I don't know, to be honest. Like, we're off to the side, and I know a lot of people see that as a bad thing. It's like, oh, we're shoot off to the side. But I found that to be easier for me when I was a kid. It's like, well, Artist Alley has always been on the side. Even when I was younger, I remember it being on the side. And I don't find that it being on the quote unquote side made it negative. It's like, that's just where it is. Like, that's just where it is in the building. Like, where's Artist Alley? It's on the side. Like, you're just like, what side of the building? I'm like, I don't know, I'm a kid. Like, let's look on the map which side of the building it's on.
Right.
As a kid, I didn't know how to read maps, so I would end up on the wrong side. I'm like, this is the wrong side. You have to go back to the other side, And so it's not a negative thing to be on the side of the building. It's just, I think the people that want to find Artist Alley will find Artist Alley. Like, maybe it's not necessarily for the casual fan. Maybe it is. I don't know. But I knew growing up that's what I would look for. So I would find it. So if people want to find it, they'll find you. And if you just walk the whole floor, you'll run into it. It's there. And if that's what you're into, you'll stay there and you'll look at all of it. But if you're not, you'll go back. Like, I've seen it, like working Artist Alley over the years. You people watch. Like, when you're not doing anything, like when it's dead or whatever, you kind of see what's happening around you. And a lot of times you'll see people like, oh, here it is. Like, this is what I've been looking for. And then you'll get those casual fans like, what is this? Oh, it's just like the artists and stuff. Oh, let's go back over here. Let's go buy t-shirts. And it's like, okay, well, those were the people. They were never going to stay anyway. So it doesn't really matter. Although
I think this year, the foot traffic in the area might be increased because I think DC is going to be in that area now.
Yeah, they're going to be
is that right?
Next to Funko.
Yeah.
Who wasn't coming? I thought, was it Marvel not coming? So I thought someone was not coming. I thought it was DC.
Well, like Warner Brother, but the DC Comics booth will be there.
Oh, okay.
They moved from
the kind of the comic center.
Where the center is, near Marvel. They moved over to the Artist Alley corner, right next to Funko.
Right next to Funko. How's that even work? Because Funko takes up that whole corner.
Yeah. Well, they're in the back wall.
Yes.
Where WB is. I think they're gonna connect, kind of.
Oh,
right next to each other.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, cool. Well, hopefully that draws some more attention, but at the same time, I don't know that those big booths help or not. I don't know that.
Well, I think it may only help if you're like a DC artist and you're you're a DC artist in Artist Alley.
Right.
So.
Right. Well, you never know. Like, there might just be someone walking by because, there are fans that just like to buy prints and stuff, and then they'll.
But yeah, along the way to the other
to booth. DC, hopefully. Yeah, hopefully it draws some foot traffic.
Hopefully.
Honestly, I last year was a bit rough, but I think it was because of my location, because I was like pretty much up against the wall, and like I was like second to the last to the wall. And I think I remember my experiences in Artist Alley, and those were the ones where I didn't want to walk all the way in. It's just, and it's like, it's this thing where you as some like a fan, you can feel that those artists want to buy something from you. And I understand that. Like, I understand it being the artist now on the other side of the table wanting a fan to buy something. It's like, hey, just come in here and just buy something, okay? So I could validate my existence. But
so how do you engage with potential people who are going to buy stuff from you?
I don't know. I'm a people person. I could talk to people. Like, a lot of artists are introverts. I'm an extrovert. Being in wrestling 10 years, it kind of, if I wasn't before, I had to be, right? To be out in the world, like in spandex, would showing the world everything. So it's like, after that, you kind of learn how to talk to people and just kind of gauge the room. And like, I just, I like to think that I could fill people out for the most part. And you do it long enough, you understand, like, and trust me, you'll still get those curveballs, but you kind of understand just your initial interaction with people, like where it's going to go. It's like, this person isn't going to buy anything. This person just wants to talk. This person might buy something. You kind of get those vibes off of people. But then once in a while, you just get a curveball. Like, there will be the standard thing where I don't think anyone is going to buy anything is where they only look down. They will not make eye contact with you. I feel like people, if they think they make eye contact with you, they owe you something for some reason or whatever. I get that vibe sometimes. And I'm like, you could just look at me. We're just people. We can have a conversation. You can not buy something, or you can, whatever you want to do. But anyway, so I find that a lot of people that don't buy something is they don't want to make eye contact with you. And then this one girl, she was definitely doing that. I'm like, okay, she's not going to buy anything. I'm like, all right, just let me know if you need any help or anything. And feel free to flip through anything. And she goes, how much is this book? And I was just like, oh, it's this. She said, okay, I'll take it. And I'm like, whoa, what just happened? Like, and it's just like, whoa, that is the opposite of the normal experience. Right. Like, when they don't want to make eye contact or really talk to you at all, it's like, they're just walking by. And it's not a big deal. It's just what it is. But then, yeah, you'll get those interactions sometimes. And then you'll get the other one, which is way more infuriating, is where they completely seem like they're going to buy something and they talk to you about everything that you do. They talk to you about your work, their process, the characters, the story. And they seem really interested. And they go, all right, man, well, it's great talking to you. And they just walk away. It's like, whoa, that was 30 minutes of my life. I'm never going to get back, And it's just like, I don't know. Somewhere in the middle is good. So, but like when you're doing too much, it's like, all right, well, yeah, I'm exhausted now from that conversation.
And I'm sure you get quite a few people who you maybe make initial contact. They might not buy something from you at that convention, but they'll see you at another convention and they'll buy
for sure. Yeah. And it's like, like I said, it's not all of it is experiences. It's not like I mean, it would be great if everyone bought something from me. Like, don't get me wrong. That's, part of the reason why we're there is to meet people, but also to make money because it's our job. But it's cool seeing people that, it's like, oh, that's just a person that comes and talks to me every show. And I've had that. I've had like this guy that he's talked to me, I think for 4 or 5 years. He comes and he talks to me every year. And I'm like, that's just that guy. He talks to me. It's cool. And this past year, he got a commission from me, like a $200 commission. I'm like, holy shit. Like, whoa. Like, that was crazy. That was super unexpected. So, and it's just, it is what it is. Like, oh, that guy's cool. We just have nice talks. And then out of nowhere, they hook you up. And it's like, oh, right on. Cool.
Will you be doing commissions this year?
Yeah. I'll do commissions. Yeah. Last year I had to take a lot more commissions, like more than I like to do. I actually like to do take-home commissions, but last year I was really competing with someone next to me because he did like super quick commissions, like $20 super fast commissions, like 5-minute commissions. And what was happening was, since I was at the end, he was at the complete end, and I was second to last. His line started building up in front of my booth. So I was being blocked off essentially. So everyone would see a crowd and they would go, what's going on over there? So they'd stand in front of my booth to see what was going on over there. And I was just like, oh man, this is killing me. Luckily the last day I got a move, it was nothing on him, it's do your hustle. But it's like, oh man, and you kind of got a special attraction thing like that. It kind of screws you up. So I found that my sales took a dip just because of my location. So what I had to do to make up for it was start taking commissions. Because normally I just like to sell prints at shows and books. Like I try to really push the book. Mm-hmm. But, it's just like, oh, sometimes you got to hustle at shows. So I'll probably take a couple commissions.
Have you ever done like pre-commissions? Like
I would never advertise, but I would definitely like that. I
Yeah.
would like to do pre-commissions because then it's just like, well, I got to do the work before I get there,
Right.
you know, and then you get better work. Like I don't like my commissions at shows. I don't like, for me, it doesn't feel like my best work because I feel like I'm rushing. It's like, okay, well, can you have this done in a couple of hours, or or like, well, today's my only day, and I'm just like, oh man, I want to like sit and like we were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I like to think about what I'm going to draw, the composition of it or whatever. But when you're in a hurry, you just got to bang it out. And it's just like, I'm going to do my best work that I can in that allotted time, but I don't feel the best about it. Like I'm still try to get you the best commission I can, but me personally, I don't feel the best about it. So.
Right. I guess we can do a quick thunder round. Alex, take it away.
All right. First question. If you were a color, what color would you be?
Oh, probably yellow. Yellow or green. Green was my first thing in my head for some reason.
We are wearing a green shirt.
Oh, yeah. Green was the first thing in my head, but yellow is my favorite color.
So, okay.
Cool. All right. Does it represent anything?
I have no idea.
Just like
I just like yellow, Yellow is a nice color. Reminds me of Bruce Lee, the Lakers.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Speaking of Lakers, did you want to mention the thing that you're working on earlier today, or is that...
Oh yeah, I'm doing this Genie Bus print. It's not going to be like, I don't know, have like a grip of it for sale or anything. Maybe I'll just put it online and see if Laker fans want to buy it. Like Comic-Con's not really a place for it. I mean, who knows, whatever.
But I just thought it was interesting that you're coming up with it like on the spot.
Yeah, and she's going to be there, so. I want to get her to sign that and a basketball. I'm gonna have her sign a basketball. So I collect Lakers signatures on basketballs, and she's like a really good one to have. So.
Oh yeah. All right. See, next question. If you could form a tag team with any pro wrestler, who would it be, and why did you pick that person?
Bret Hart, because he's my idol.
Favorite?
Yeah, he's my favorite wrestler of all time.
Who would you want to compete against?
The original Rockers would be really cool.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah. Me and Brett. What's funny is when I was working, the Anvil was still working. When I was still doing
For
pro
real?
wrestling. Yeah, the Anvil was still taking indie bookings.
Wow.
And Bret Hart was already retired at that time. He had all those concussions. And I always thought it would have been super cool. There was one promoter who liked booking the old guys. And I was like, hey, man, you think you can book Anvil and team me and him? And so, like, we could be, like, the New Heart Foundation. Like I'm not going to be called that, obviously, but in my head, that's what it was. I was like, oh, I'll be partners with the Night Heart, like, that's super cool. Never happened, but it was a good idea.
Okay, comic related. Why is Cyclops your favorite X-Men?
He's the leader. I like to think that I'm a leader. I like to be the leader. He has super strong power. He has like the best power. Like it's unfortunate because he can't just not have his visor on. But I always wanted to do a short story where he just like lost his mind and like just started destroying people. Like he just took his visor off and started walking down the street and just like started looking at stuff, disintegrating buildings and stuff like that. Or, it maybe like something like an Old Man Logan type thing where he lost everything. So he just lost his mind and destroyed everyone. He always got the girl. He looked cool. And his name's Scott. So that also helped.
If you could form your own X-Men team, what would your powers be in? Who would you want to be on your team?
I've always wanted to fly. I always think flying is a super cool power. Like realistically, right? Mm-hmm. Like if we all had to pick a power today, what would it be? I think mine would be flight. It's the thing that just makes the most sense. In an X-Men comic, it's really boring. Like you need to do something else. Flying is like a secondary power in comics. It's like not cool enough to be your main power. If you fly, you usually have to be strong or something to balance it out, right? I don't know. Maybe some kind of like exploding power. Like, I don't know, some kind of projectile situation. I wouldn't want to be Cyclops. I think Cyclops is cool, but I wouldn't want to be him. But I think like having projectiles out of your hands is like a kind of nice, like it's a nice middle ground because you could do normal stuff. You could look like a normal person, but you could just kind of point at stuff and blow it up. Like that's cool. I like that.
You could be like almost being like Havoc.
Yeah, that actually was the first thing in my head was like Havoc. Like Havoc was pretty cool. I liked him. I liked all of his costumes or his older costumes, like the one like with the Saturn rings on his head, whatever right. Supposed to look like. That's what I always thought they look. I'm like, oh, he has like Saturn rings on his head. And then the X Factor one where he had the jacket.
I don't think I remember that.
He kind of had like a Gambit style face mask, and his hair was out, and it was like I think it was the first run of him as the X Factor leader. I think they all got a redesign, and they all had jackets. Like most of them had jackets. It was kind of fun.
So
very 90s.
Besides yourself as an X-Men, what for other mutants would you want on your team?
Okay? So I like a lot of the X-Men is drama, right? You need the drama of it. So if I had to pick an X-Men team, you'd of course want Wolverine and Cyclops on it for the drama there. So they would just butt heads constantly. And then I would kind of want like a nice pairing. Like I really love Longshot. Longshot I think is like a really underestimated X-Man. Like he's really great. And I think him and Jubilee would have a fun dynamic together, just being around each other. Maybe Psylocke or... no, I don't want to go Jean Grey. She's always there.
Which version of Psylocke?
Like the good version. Come on, man. Not whatever the heck they're doing right now. Like I don't know what's going on. The 90s, the Jim Lee version, the ninja. Like that. Like you just have like
not the British Betsy.
No.
Okay.
No one was clamoring for the British Betsy to come back. I don't know why they decided to do that storyline. It's fine, whatever. But like, yeah. So Psylocke. I'm trying to think of non-couples. You know, you don't want the book coupled out already. You want to get the tension to get to there. Mm-hmm. And if they're already coupled up, it takes that away. Maybe Polaris. I don't know. Is Polaris single in the comics?
I think wasn't her and Havoc together?
Yeah, but then they broke up, and then he was with Janet Van Dyne actually.
What?
Yeah,
Dang.
Getting some of that little wasp, little.
No,
wasp
but I think you with Longshot and Jubilee that's I think that'd be interesting.
I meant for like a sidekick.
No.
In my head, I always see Jubilee as a kid.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
I know she's like a grown up now.
Yeah.
Like
no, but I meant it as a sidekick. I mean, like
yeah. It's like that's like a fun coupling right there. Not coupling, but it's a fun pairing.
Right.
There we go.
They can definitely vibe off each other.
Yeah, Longshot's so weird. Did you guys read the Peter David X Factor run?
Oh no,
you should really read that run. It's like in the X world, like that's my favorite X storyline. Out of all of the storylines, that's my favorite. It has Multiple Man, Wolfsbane, Longshot, and Shatterstar.
Okay.
Strong Guy, Siren, and M.
I may have read it, but I didn't know it was a Peter David.
Yeah,
at the time.
It's fantastic. They're detectives in Mutant Town.
Right.
So it was like after No More Mutants happens. So you've got a lot of mutants that are like mutated looking, but they don't have powers or anything. And then you have, so a lot of them are just deformed. And then there's a lot of crime in Mutant Town. And so like they're just detectives in Mutant Town. It's a really cool story. Really, really cool.
Do you have a name for your team? Or ever thought of one?
For the X-Men team? No, they're just X-Men. I always liked X-Force. X-Force was a cool team. And I didn't read X Factor as much. Mm-hmm. I liked the way they looked. I was like, because they never have the top artists on X Factor, and X Force always seemed to have good artists. I really liked Rob Liefeld as a kid, so Jim Lee and Rob Liefeld and Todd McFarlane, those are like my three guys. And I was just like, oh, these guys are the best. So if someone drew kind of like them, I would stick on the book and like read it for a while.
Cool. All right, last question for the Thunder Round. If you could have a meal, anyone dead or alive, real or fictional, who would it be, and what Filipino dish would you serve them?
Who would I eat? Oh, like if you could eat anyone dead or alive. No. I was like, how'd you know, cannibal? Oh, that's a good question. That is a good question. I think I'd have a meal with Jim Lee and just kind of pick his brain. Yeah. And I watch his streams online, so I know he likes egg rolls.
Every Sunday,
yeah, I know he likes egg rolls. So he buys like Jack in the Box egg rolls. Super weird to me for an Asian guy to be just super into Jack in the Box egg rolls. I'm not gonna lie to you, they're
actually not too bad.
They're not bad, and then their chicken bowls are actually pretty good. Yeah, they're actually pretty good. Bowls, so since I know that he likes egg rolls, we probably have to serve him lumpia, right? Like that's just.
Any other dishes you want to?
Well, I love Sinigang.
Oh yeah.
Sinigong's my all-time
That's
favorite.
my favorite too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's the best. And like you all know people, they're like, oh, I like Nilaga. I'm like, so you like?
And what is sinigang for our audience?
Well, it could be it's a stew. It's very sour.
Yeah.
And it's like, what is it like? Is it beef ribs or pork ribs?
You
Or
can
you can
It
do
could be
beef or
anything.
pork.
Some people use shrimp.
Yeah.
Just-
I think my mom uses. I think she uses beef ribs. And just like she boils them, they're so tender they just fall off the bone.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's the best.
And the sourness of the soup base comes from usually tamarind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the more sour the better.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the sabao just gets you.
Yeah.
And then pancit, of course. Like,
Just the whole spread, huh?
yeah. But yeah, sinigang
lumpia.
would be the main deal.
Cool. And while we're on a Filipino Asian tip, we'll sort of segue into our last segment of the podcast. We'll talk a little bit about Asian representation in pop culture and comic books. Why is it important to have Asian representation?
Because we're a large population of the world, and like we should definitely be represented. That's something I always noticed when I was a kid, and I talk about it at shows. I don't like to talk about it too much because I don't want it to be a gimmick. I don't want to lean on it too much. Is like I have a Filipino brother and sister team on the second shift, and then of course Lee and Mars, they're mine and Mars Avatar, so they're Filipino. But growing up, there wasn't a lot of Asian characters in general in comics. There were 0 Filipinos in comics, and I always thought that was weird. And especially since there's a ton of creatives that are Filipino. It's like, how do we have so many creatives in the comic world? And in 2019, we finally got one mainstream character wave. Like that's crazy to me. Like that's nonsense.
I mean, a lot of people don't realize that Bishop was originally supposed to be Filipino.
Yeah. Willis Portacio originally created Bishop to be Filipino, and then editors last minute said, "Hey, he needs to be black," and so changed him to black. So that's And what's really unfortunate is Bishop's really popular.
Yeah.
So it was like, man, what if Filipino Bishop would have been super duper popular? Like one of our dudes would have been a really popular character, And so that's for me when I was doing my own book. I was like, I want to create Filipino characters. So I started Second Shift in 2000. I think the first issue came out in 2013. So that was the first time that I know of, like a super. Well, no, that's not true. Like I know there are other indie creators or people that just created their own Filipino characters. Maybe not ever did anything with it, but like, of course, So yeah, so I created my brother and sister dynamic, Eddie and Sarah, or Edwin. They're in the second shift. So, and then Lee and Mars, obviously. So I just wanted to have someone in the books that were like me, and like that's what I wanted to put in the books is like that brother sister dynamic that you don't really see in comics. That's just different from American siblings or whatever. As far as the comics go, and as far as like pop culture, like movies and stuff, like. Let me go back to comics real quick. Like, growing up, there were so few Asians that it was kind of like we just kind of had to adopt all of them as ours. You know what I mean? Like, oh, we got Sunfire, he's Japanese. Okay, well, whatever. Close enough. And then, Jubilee, she's Chinese, right? Jubilee's Chinese, and I believe.
I think so.
Yeah. So then you kind of just find these characters, and you're like, okay, well, close enough, and like. So they're Asian, so it counts as mine, and then so you just like these rando characters and you make them yours, but it's like, well, that sucks. You shouldn't have to try that hard to find someone to identify with. So I don't know. Yeah. So I wanted to kind of fix that, at least in my own world.
Right.
It's like have that be a thing. Like have characters cook spam and eggs, like in the book and whatever. As far as like movies and TV pop culture stuff, like to this day, like it's really offensive when they change characters and you find out the reason is like, oh, we didn't want to be offensive. Like they changed the Mandarin wasn't Asian, like his name's Mandarin. So and it's just like, well, we didn't want to he's like you look at the character, he is like a racial stereotype, right? He's got the Fu Manchu and everything, long nails. It's like you don't have you don't have to look like that. You can fix it. You can change it. You could make him like a triad boss. Shave his head, give him a goatee, shave his head, put tattoos all over his hands or something, and then you can still give him the rings, have him in a suit, look like a badass triad. Like, that's real, right? Triad bosses are real. So, like, just make him that. Like, why not? And it's or the ancient one. The ancient one, like, instead of being an old Asian man, they're, we didn't want to be offensive. Like, well, you couldn't have at least made it ancient, like an Asian woman? Like, but no, you made it like a see-through white woman. Like, she's like the whitest of white people, like, you couldn't have gone any further from the original character. And it's, again, to not be offensive. It's like, don't you see that taking away all of the little characters that we have is very offensive? Like, it's offensive to give us nothing. Like, we've had very little as it is, and you take what little we have, and it's like, I think that's really crappy.
Yeah, we haven't really had anything besides Bruce Lee, to be honest.
yeah, not a ton. I remember I was talking about this, like, when Rush Hour, I think it was 2 that came out. I was watching it in the theaters, and Ernie Reyes Jr. popped up on the screen, and my theater went insane. Like, because it was in Paradise Hills, and like, it's a heavily Filipino populated area, and everyone lost their mind in the theaters. And he was just he was just a front desk guy, and like, he was with the triad, but like, they saw them, and he started running, and they chased him, and then he met up with like the bosses, and then so he left. That was his entire scene. But my theaters lost their minds for just a cameo of Ernie Reyes Jr. It's like, our people are starving for this stuff, and like. Like, for Hollywood to think that there is no market for it is crazy. It's crazy.
We're starting to see more Filipino influence, I think, out there.
Yeah, it's starting to get there.
Yeah, I mean,
slowly but surely.
Yeah, it's a far cry from when I was living in Orange County for like the first half of the year. People thought I was Mexican.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, I'm from here, so there's tons of Filipino down here, but. Like, I'm mixed race, so I'm like Filipino and white, and then Filipino and white tended to look Mexican. Like, and we're so close to the border, they're like, "Oh, what are you, Mexican?" I'm like, "No, I'm Filipino." And it's just, as you get older, it doesn't bother you too much. But as a little kid, you're like, "I'm freaking Filipino. Like, why do you guys keep calling me this?" You get offended, and like, now it's whatever. It's like, we just look different, like, And more people get it now. Like, a lot of times, as I got older, I got more Hawaiian than anything. Like, I started becoming Hawaiian. I'm just like, that's more acceptable. But then after a while, it's just like, you just tell them. It's fine.
So what are some ways that we can help expedite this, acceptance of Filipinos and Asians and
just representing as hard as we can, And like I was saying initially, it was like, I don't like to talk about it too much when I'm at the table, because I don't want the Asian or Filipino audience to feel like I'm pandering to our people. It's like, hey man, it's all Filipino shit, come buy it. It's like, no, look, this, and I'll explain. I'm like, look, this is why they're there. Like, because I grew up and yada yada, and half of the time, like, they won't buy into it, but half of the time they will. They'll be super about it. And I think that's a little problematic too, is like, it's something I talked to Travis and Rodney about, just because like Rodney, he's created a black fantasy character because he did not have he didn't have any black fantasy characters growing up, and that's something he wanted to see, right? And Travis has TAR syndrome. He has different limbs, he has his short forearms, and so he never saw anyone like him. And these are all things that we mention at shows when we do shows together. And the one thing I've noticed is both of their audiences, they're super into it right away. Like, that's something. But with Filipinos, I've noticed it's split. It's very 50-50. It's like they're into it and they're down for the cause. They're like, yeah, that's dope. Like, I felt the same way. And they'll pick up the book or whatever the case is. And then the other one's like, oh, that's cool. And just walk away. And I'm like, why is that? Why are we so split on that? Like, what is it? Is it because I'm mixed, or is it like, what's the reasoning on it? And my conclusion, just because it's something I think about this type of stuff. It's like, I think we're raised to work so hard at everything that it feels like a cheat. It feels like, oh, you're just trying to pander me because we're both Asian, and so you want me to buy it because it's Asian. It's like, no, that's not why I want you to buy it, because it's good. Yeah. But there's also something in there for you that's like, a bit of your people are in there, It's like, but it's something I think about. It's like, I think that we were raised to, if you want to succeed, you work hard. That's all I've ever been taught. Yeah. So, and I feel like there's something inside, and you also feel like you're competing with each other to be the best, right? So, and I also think that maybe if it was a Marvel character, maybe if it was Wave, then it would already be accepted. But the difference there is, like Lineal Yu, he is an established artist. He's worked hard to get where he is. Therefore, he is a success. So we accept him as a success. So therefore, we accept his characters. Where maybe they view me as someone still working to get there. So they're like, well, not right now. You know, maybe if you get to that level, then maybe we'll check out your stuff. You know, that type of thing. So, but I usually don't pitch the book unless I see them stop and look at my work. It's like, oh, you stopped enough to look at my work. So there's something there. Mm-hmm. Like, you like the way I draw. But I don't know, something in that pitch went awry. Like, and I'm like, and what is it? Like, because the pitch is so simple. It's just like, just so you know, there's a Filipino brother and sister in there. I grew up reading comics, then I never saw Filipino characters, and I think it's weird that we have so many creators but no characters, and I just wanted to put some of our culture into comics. And then, you know, you get the 50-50 split, so it's just kind of like, what is that? Like, I feel like that's a good thing to say to someone. Mm-hmm. And like, yeah. But it doesn't go that way. It doesn't go the way you want it to go every time. And it's just something I think about. And so, I don't know. So support, I guess. Right. I guess be more accepting of other people's hustle. I think everyone sees that everyone's trying to hustle in one way or another, try to get where they need to go. And instead of just going like, well, I got to beat that guy, just see what they're doing, and maybe it'll be something you're interested in. So you could maybe support them, and they could support you. Mm-hmm. So,
speaking of support, I mean, how do you? I mean, is your connection with your audience on social media, does it relate, or does it sort of connect and relate to how it is at a con, like in terms of like engagement?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Like when your social media, you know, your interaction with your fans on social media, does it translate to them coming to the shows? And
yeah, definitely. I'll get people that like it's usually I'll meet them in person first, and then they stay in touch with me online. Like, and they'll be from go to San Diego Comic-Con, and then they'll not live there. They'll live in like Arizona or wherever, and then they'll go, "Hey, I don't know, you remember me? Which is brutal for me, by the way. It's like, I don't know if you remember me. I'm like, oh, I meet a lot of people, and my memory's bad from wrestling. Like, too many concussions. But
have you had a lot of concussions?
Oh yeah, yeah, like 12, something like that.
Wow.
I don't know, maybe more. I can't remember them. Pesky concussions. So, but they'll be like, oh, I met you X amount of years ago at this show, you know, or whatever. And so it's cool. Like they'll follow back up with me. And there was a guy I met at San Diego Comic Fest. And I think it was the first year I did Comic Fest. It was the first year I had Second Shift issue 1 out. And I think I saw him, it was 2 years ago at San Diego. And he goes, hey, I met you at Comic Fest. And I bought Second Shift issue 1 from you. And, he goes, man, it was so great talking to you, and you like inspired me to do my own book and this and that. And I'm like, whoa, really? I was like, I'm just a dude, you know, I'm just like an indie guy, just creating comic books. And he goes, yeah, you know, it was really fun talking to you. And it's like he picked up the rest of my books, and he was just like picking my brain about creating comics. And like I was like, oh, this is freaking rad. Like, that's really, really cool. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
I guess you should never underestimate the amount of, I guess, your ability to sort of affect other people.
Yeah.
You know, because even us, I mean, we don't have a large following at all, but, you know, sometimes we're at a convention and random people come up to us and say, hey, I listened to this episode, or,
oh, that's cool.
You know, I saw your post on social media, and, you know, it's like, it's really humbling. And at the same time, it's sort of like, you know, for us in the beginning, when we started the podcast and the blog, it was like, you know, how are we going to, like, what about our numbers and, you know, all this stuff?
Yeah.
But really, the only number that really matters is the one person that really comes up to you at a convention and says, hey, that episode you did on this or that helped influence me to, you know, check out this artist.
Yeah, that's great, man. Yeah. No, that's for sure. That's what it's about is, you know, like I was telling you guys before, is like your influence, like what you do on this earth before you leave, like what your legacy is going to be. And like, if you've gotten people to listen to at least one episode or 2 episodes and think of, you know, or reach out to an artist or check something out that they normally wouldn't check out. It's like you're doing something, and that's really cool. So yeah, no, that's awesome. And like like you were saying, is like you want to build your fan base. You have what you have now, but that's part of the hustle. That's why we support each other. It's like, like you guys come out to the shows, you check all the shows out, you guys are everywhere. And then, like we love that you have us on, it's just like, all right, we're supporting each other. It's like when you interview us, then we're like, hey, check out this podcast. We're on this or whatever. So, hopefully it helps a little. We're spreading the word about the Hall H podcast as well. Not only are we getting to talk about what we want to talk about, but we're exposing them to you guys as hosts and like, oh, these guys seem pretty cool, see what else they have on their feed.
Definitely. I mean, there is a mutual, relationship there.
Symbiotic relationship. Yeah. Together we're Venom.
Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience before we close out the show?
No, just head on to Artist Alley. See Emily Rocha down there and Vince. I don't know Vince's booth. I don't know Emily's either. But you can go to Small Press for Accidental Aliens at San Diego Comic Con. We are K05 in Small Press. And then just check out my social media. I might be in Artist Alley, so if you go to @ScottLost, SCOTTLOST, on Twitter or Instagram, I'll update that as to where I am, if I'm going to be at the Small Press booth that day or what half of the day. Since there's like 5 of us, so it's like I'll be on the morning shift or the evening shift, afternoon shift. So just check out that. Or you can go to accidentalaliens.com and we'll post up stuff there. And that's actually a link to our Instagram page. So anything we post on Instagram will pop up on our website. Or you can go to @Accidental Aliens on Instagram or Accident Aliens on Twitter. We couldn't fit the full name in there. So we'll post up stuff there, what's going on. And you can always pre-order books, or if you go onto our website, you can pick up the anthologies there. We have a very limited amount of 2017s left. And, 2018, 19, Tarek Zion, Cherub, Second Shift, those are all on there as well. So you can order, or you can hit me up and pre-order Wanderers issue 1. That's it.
Cool. Hey, brother, thanks again for coming on the show.
No, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Alex, close out the show.
All right. We know that there are tons of other podcasts out there that you could be listening to, and we're humbled that you choose to listen to ours. So thank you so much for tuning into the Hall H Show podcast, where we love showcasing independent creators here like Scott Lost. If you believe in our mission to be the voice of independent creators, we would love a rating, hopefully 5 stars, and comment on iTunes or whatever you listen to podcasts. Also, please share our episodes using the hashtag HallHShow. Peace, cheers, and if you would like to recommend a guest for our show, please reach out to us on our social media accounts or our website, hallh.com.
Cool.
Thank you.
Peace, cheers. Talk to you later.
Cool. That was fun, guys.